In this lecture, we're going to see how we can configure Visual Studio Code to use the MSVC compiler that we installed in a previous lecture. Let's do this. The first thing I want you to do is to open the developer prompt or PowerShell. Let's type developer here, and we will choose developer PowerShell for Visual Studio 2022. And we are doing this because we want Visual Studio Code to start in a mode where it knows where to find the C++ compiler, which is the compiler from Microsoft that we want to use in this lecture here. Once you have this opened, I want you to type code and a dot. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And you are going to hit enter. This is going to open Visual Studio Code on your system. Don't worry about what it is going to open here. Let's see what we have. It is going to pop up a window asking you to trust the folder that you are trying to open. It is my folder here, so I am going to open this. I am going to trust it. And this is going to open Visual Studio Code in a mode where it knows about the path of the compiler from Microsoft. To really test that we have things in a way that they should be, please come to terminal here and choose new terminal. This is going to open up a terminal window down below here. Let me highlight this for everybody to see down here. You see this window here? This is where we're going to type our command. And down here, I want you to type cl.exe and see that you get some output. And if you get output like this, it means that Visual Studio Code knows where to find the C++ compiler from Microsoft. And the things we want to do here are going to work. Now, let me show you what could happen if you didn't set up this correctly. Let's close this, and we are going to start Visual Studio Code right from the terminal here. So let's say Visual Studio Code, and we are going to open this up, and we are going to wait for this to come up a little bit. Okay, Visual Studio Code is here. You see that we seemingly have the same thing like we had before. But now, if we go down and say cl.exe, you're going to see that it is going to complain about not knowing where this compiler is. Many of you are going to face this problem. And if you face this problem, it is because you didn't start Visual Studio Code in a mode where it knows where to find the compiler from Microsoft. And to do that, you have to start it from the terminal, from the developer prompt for Windows. This is a bit convoluted, but that's how it works. So make sure you have this developer PowerShell or developer prompt for Visual Studio 2022 opened, and you will say code and a dot like this. If you hit, I don't know what I did type there, so let's close this again and open it up again. We're going to say code and a dot and hit enter on our keyboard. This is going to open Visual Studio Code in a mode where it knows about the environment variables from the compiler from Microsoft. And if we say cl.exe, you will see a message like this. I really wanted this to be super clear because I had a lot of students facing this problem here, and I hope this is really clear. Now that we have this, the first thing we're going to do is to create a folder on our system. I am going to be using this folder called for VS Code MSVC configuration on my system here. And what I am going to do to open this folder in Visual Studio Code is to drag and drop it on the Visual Studio Code window here. If you wanted, you can do file, open folder, and browse to this folder, but that's a bit convoluted. We're not going to do that here. I am just going to drag it and drop it here. And this is going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. You can see it opened up here. It is an empty folder. So we have it right here. And the first thing we want to do is to create a file containing C++ code that we would like to compile. And what we're going to do is to click on the plus icon here that says new file. If you hover over it, it is going to say new file. Click on it. It's going to give you a window in which you can type. We're going to say main.exe. That's, it's not main.exe. Sorry for this. I am going to right click and delete this. Yes, I want to delete this, and I am going to create this again. We're going to say main.cpp. That's what we want to create here. And it is going to be a C++ file that we would like to compile from Visual Studio Code here. Now, I don't want you to type the code that we're going to be using here. What we're going to do is to steal the code that you are going to find in the files for the lecture here if you go to the course GitHub repository. So go there under this lecture that you are watching here, under environment setup for Windows, you're going to find this file. And if you copy the code here, just like I am doing here, I don't want you to worry about the content of the folder. At this point, we are concerned with getting a C++ compiler to compile this code in C++20 mode. So copy this, come back to your Visual Studio Code, make sure you are in the main CPP file and paste this in. And this is going to give us the code that we want to try. Again, don't worry about the contents of the file here. We're going to have a chance to learn about all these things. At this point, we want this to compile and print a message for us to see on the terminal in Visual Studio Code here. Now that we have the source code, the first thing we want to do is to compile it. And to set up a compiler, you come to terminal and say configure tasks. Once you do that, you're going to see that you will have a bunch of entries here, and this is going to detect the compilers that you have installed on your system. And for me, you see that we have detected the compiler from Microsoft, which is cl.exe here. This is what I want you to choose because this is what we are configuring here. So hit this entry for the compiler from Microsoft, and it is going to open a tasks.json file that you see to the top here. But another thing I would like you to notice is that if you look to the left, we have a folder created in our project, which is for VS Code MSVC configuration. We have a .vs code folder created. And I want you to be careful about this and notice it because it's going to contain vital information to allow you to work with this editor in a comfortable way. If we right click on main CPP, or we can even go there directly. So let's go there in our project here. We see we have a .vs code folder. And if we go in, we will find a tasks.json file, and it is the file that is opened up here. I want you to notice this. Now, this tasks.json file is going to contain the configurations that allow you to compile C++ code using the compiler from Microsoft right from the Visual Studio Code editor. As it is now, it is going to work, but it is not going to work in C++20 mode. If you notice here, the const eval thing here is a C++20 feature to make sure that your compiler can support this. And what we need to do to allow our compiler to run in C++20 mode is use the configuration here. I am just going to copy them. You can find these on the GitHub repository. I am going to share these after I am done with this video here. So let's copy. And we will come back to our tasks.json file. We will take out whatever it is we had here. And we will use our configuration here for the compiler from Microsoft. The most important thing we have here is to let the compiler work in C++20 mode. So we are doing that through the C++ latest setting we have here. And another thing is to let the compiler compile everything in the current folder that has the CPP extension. We are doing that through the line here. And we want the compiler to produce a binary executable whose name is rooster.exe. That's really what we are doing here. And I want you to copy this configuration because typing it is going to probably introduce typos if you are new to this kind of thing. So I really do recommend you go to the GitHub repository, find this thing, copy it and paste it in the Visual Studio Code, and everything is going to work well. Another thing I want to change here is the label here to let it say build with the MSVC compiler. I am going to do that. And I think we have everything we need to build with the C++ compiler from Microsoft right from the Visual Studio Code editor. Now we can close the tasks.json file. And if we come back to terminal and choose run task, we're going to see that we have the option to build with MSVC. This is coming from our tasks.json file, which is inside our .vs code folder on the left here. So we're going to do that. We're going to come to terminal, run task, and build with MSVC. And this is going to call the C++ compiler from Microsoft to compile our binary executable. And when compilation is done, we will see a message saying compilation or build was finished successfully. We see that here. And we have our output file, which is named rooster.exe. This is what we want to see. So now that we have the build successful, we can open a new terminal window. Let's go to terminal and say new terminal. And once we have this, we can run rooster. And this is going to print a value of 3, meaning that this is working with our C++ compiler, and we are ready to start using Visual Studio Code with the C++ compiler from Microsoft. And this is really cool. The last thing we want to solve here before we go from this lecture is to solve the squiggly lines we see here. And this is happening because Visual Studio Code doesn't know to use the C++ 20 standard to understand the code we type here with things like IntelliSense, and we want to change that. To do that, you come to View and say Command Palette, and you can type C or C++. Edit Configuration UI, it is the menu you see here. I am going to click on it, and this is going to pop up a window saying IntelliSense Configurations. Here we're going to see a bunch of compiler settings that we can use here. We are going to use Win32 here in the configuration name. The compiler path is going to be left to the compiler from Microsoft. So if that's what you want to use, you can use it here. And another thing we can find here, which may be of interest, let's minimize this a little bit, is the path where you have your C++ compiler. And you see it is using the compiler from Microsoft Visual Studio 2019, but if you want, you can use 2022. You can choose it right here, but I am going to keep it to 2019. You can choose 2022. It is probably going to say 2022 for you because that's what's going to be detected. And what I want you to change down below is the C++ standard using by your IntelliSense engine. We are going to select here and say C++ 20. Okay, that's what we are using with the course here. And once you do that, you are going to close out of this. And if we come back to the main CPP file, you see that the squiggles that we had are gone. And this is a legit C++ file. It is compiling fine. And if we compile this and run this, we will get a rooster.exe binary that we can run and have the output here. And this is really what I wanted you to see. This is all I had to share in this lecture. I hope you didn't find it confusing. We are going to stop here in this lecture. The next one, we're going to start and see how to install other compilers you may want to use with Visual Studio Code. So go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.